You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGachy, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
What is up, good people? How you doing out there? I hope this finds you well wherever you are in the world. Really stoked to get this episode to you. Been trying to make this happen for a long time. Celisse is just an amazing musician and such a cool person, and I learned so much about her on this episode that I did not know. I did not know so many things about her, and she's just a delight to talk to and a legit gear nerd. And she has amazing tone. I've heard it in person. She played a Benson Vincent right in front of me and made me ashamed of myself because it does not sound like that when I play it. It was amazing. Anyway, just wanted to remind you about a couple ways you can support the podcast before we get right into the interview. And if you're planning on buying gear in the future, there's a really easy couple ways to do that. One being buy stuff through tonemob.com/reverb. If you're planning on doing anything on reverb.com in the near future, just use the link tonemob.com/reverb for whatever you're going to do. And I've had a few people ask whether or not it works with the app, and what some folks are doing, shout out to Paul Marsh, who's the one that pointed this out to me, they're using the app to add stuff to their cart and then using the link tonemob.com/reverb to check out, and that is a way around that if you want to support the show that way. If you're planning on buying some new gear, you could do a lot worse than buying from Sweetwater, so you can go to tonemob.com/sweetwater for anything that they carry to experience their wonderful customer service and get that sweet, sweet candy with every delivery. Delivery. Yeah, that's how you say that. tonemob.com/sweetwater or tonemob.com/reverb for any of your gear buying, selling, whatever things you're going to do. Also, if you want more of these conversations, you want to hear more stuff, you can go to patreon.com, and for as little as $5 a month, you will get extra episodes to your ears every week, including some more talk with Celisse, so some extended behind-the-scenes content that you're not experiencing. It's all over there at patreon.com/tonemob, and you can select the level that is right for you. All right, let's move on. Let's get into the episode. Let's stop all this commercial nonsense. Let's get into it with Celisse Henderson. She's amazing. Check this out. Oh yeah, and just real quick, there were a lot of weird audio gremlins that crept up in this one, and it took a lot longer to edit because of that. And so, sorry for this being a little bit late, but you're going to notice some weird irregularities here and there. That sometimes happens when you're recording via the internet, and, you know, it's just the way things go sometimes. So apologies for that, but it was such a good conversation, I don't think you're going to care all that much. But if you hear some weirdness, we know it's there, did the best we could with it, and enjoy the conversation anyway. All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Celisse Henderson, and I'm so stoked.
Woohoo! Thunderous applause.
So much fun. Oh, man. I'm trying to think of how long we've been trying to do this. It has to be like a year and a half.
No, it's been at least, because I was thinking that earlier today, and I am so grateful you've been so patient. When you initially asked me, I really was like, oh, well, we should do this like when it's time to promote the record. And like, I mean, it's just, and then like the world fell apart and, you know, everything has just, it's just different now.
Literally everything.
It's like, literally, this is the time. If there was any time to do podcasts, it's now. It is literally now when we can do, no one can go to any live shows, maybe ever again. Who knows?
Oh no, it ain't gonna be like that.
No, that's true.
I can't let it be that way.
No,
in my
it's
head.
true. That's actually true. And I actually really randomly yesterday took out a little I have a little like Black Star Superfly, like one of the like battery operated little like solid state amps. And I went
Yeah.
a local park and I just like sat on like a little bench and played for like an hour, and it was really nice. And some people stopped and listened and kept walking, and it was like, well, this feels at least adjacent to what I used to do.
Right.
But yeah, it was nice.
Oh man, I would definitely stop and listen if I heard you playing in a park,
that's
because the first time I heard you play in Chris's shop, Chris Benson, for everybody who's listening, I remember you were playing a Vincent.
Yeah.
I think you ended up picking one up.
I surely did. I actually ended up picking up two. I just got like a backup from him a couple months ago.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah.
I remember listening to you play through that first one, and I was like, I remember like Chris was kind of working with some customers or something, and I was telling you about it because I knew a lot about that amp.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you started ripping through it, and I was like, yeah, it doesn't sound like that when I play it though. So
Oh my God, that was such a fun day. I'm so glad you were there to walk me through stuff too, because I've learned, as I'm sure you already knew about Vincent amps, it's like I'm so used to, honestly, with any other amps I've ever played, even amps I love. I've been like a Fender style gal for many years. I'm just so used to like having to be very particular about where the bass is set and where the treble is set and how the reverb is set. And you said that day that you're like, kind of anywhere I put it, it always just sounds good. It's always like, okay, well, let's just do that. And that's so true. I have yet to find like an unpleasing sound from these amps, which is like never happened. So yeah.
it's kind of a weird thing, right? Because normally it's like, it's piercing my ears.
Yes, I know. And you know, there's a way in which there's like an immediacy to his amps that like, I don't even know how to explain it, but I mean, you have once you get it, but like, it's so true. Like whatever you're putting into it is what it's giving out to you, that it's like, it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of making me a better player, because I'm really very clear about like, there's not like sort of the Fender compression and washy reverb that sort of like, I don't know. There's something about the response time too that's like, it's very truthful. So it's really like, I love his amps. And I was just saying the other day, do you have a Nathan Jr., by the way?
I don't, but I helped do one of the videos for it, and have some experience with it. It's a great amp.
It really is a fantastic amp. And I told Chris, like, with 100% earnestness, that I like plugged into, he sent me one to borrow while I'm here quarantined in Ann Arbor, and I had been playing through, you know, I'd been like using an Iridium and doing like plugins, and that's its own thing. There's nothing wrong with that, but like I hadn't plugged into like a tube amp in a few months. And I unpacked this Nathan Jr. and plugged in and started playing, and I literally started crying. Like I was like, this amp sounds so good. Yes, I also haven't played in an amp through an amp for a long time, but like there is something really special about what he does. I guess this podcast is just about an endorsement for Chris Benson, which is fine by me, but I love him and I love his amps. And I said to him the other day that I'm like, I am truly a Benson believer for life, and I will always play his amps. And I cannot imagine, I truly cannot imagine falling in love with amp circuits in the way that I have with what he creates. They're really special. They really are.
I agree. And don't worry, this whole podcast has always been a Benson love fest.
Totally.
I think Chris was on episode 2.
Oh,
and,
cool. Cool.
Yeah, so we've like had a really well, obviously we've followed very different paths, but we've had like this weird similar trajectory since we both kind of like started doing what we do in the gear world. And So it's been like we've been like cohorts in a weird way, because I fell in love with his amps much the way that you did,
Yeah.
just plugging into one day. He was actually he's serviced most of my amps at this point.
Sure.
But like he was tuning this Fender 75 that I have, because it would not sound good. Like if you got it to sound good on the clean channel, it wouldn't sound good on the dirty channel, and vice versa.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So he fixed that for me. And then I saw a Monarch in the corner of his, it wasn't his shop at the time. He was actually here at Old Town Music in Portland. And I was like, what is that? He's like, oh yeah, that's my amp, you know? And I was like, just kind of casually, I'm like, your amp, you make your own amps?
Yeah.
And that's when it all started. And this was a long time ago. I don't even know how long ago it was. It was a really long time ago.
Well, I really love him, and I'm glad you guys are connected, because that means I'm connected to you too. So that's really awesome.
Oh yeah, it's worked out to be very mutually beneficial in getting podcast guests.
Totally. You know, I'm so embarrassed to say that, like, earlier today when I was like downloading the app to do this conversation, I was like, oh, I can't wait to have my conversation today with Tone Mob? What is his name? I've only really interacted with you literally like 99% over social media. So it's always like, I'm like, I feel like he told me his name when we first met, but I actually don't know, because I only see comments and messages from Tone Mob. So anyway, I'm so glad to know that your name is Blake.
I mean, that's how, most of the internet knows me. They're like, Tone Mob. Some people know me as Tone Mob Blake. People in the Facebook group around this blah, blah, my mouth's failing. Around this podcast, they know me a little bit better, because it's, me posting as me. But yeah, on all my social media, it's like Tone Mob Podcast. It's like, oh, who's that guy?
Well,
so, it's understandable.
He's Blake. I will never forget now, but I just thought it was funny earlier today. I was like, I cannot actually believe I've just been like, oh yeah, Tone Mob. Like, that's not your name, but it's funny.
For all intents and purposes, it kind of is.
I guess.
At least on Instagram, right?
That's true. That's true. But yeah.
But what I want to know, I want to know your story. Where did you start playing, or when did you start playing, rather? And how, you've had a crazy career before I ever knew anything about you. So I want to know all the details.
Wow. Well, this story is so random, and a lot of times people don't believe it. I guess they believe it more now these days, but when I first started on guitar, they were like, what? This makes no sense. But I come from a super, super musical family. Both of my parents are music teachers and choir teachers and instrumentalists and vocalists. They're both incredible. My dad had a double bachelor's in piano performance and vocal performance, master's in choral conducting. My mom has a double bachelor's in violin performance, vocal performance, master's in choral conducting. So I came from just like super cultured, learned musicians who are both choir teachers and also instrumentalists. And I grew up playing classical piano. The thing with my parents and my sisters and I is like each person has to pick an instrument. Doesn't matter what it is, whatever it is, you have to stick with it. I started on violin. I hated it so much. My dad was like, you can switch to piano, but once you switch, that's it. So I played classical piano from 4 until, 17, 18. And all the while, and sort of then middle school and high school, I just started picking up other things. I was in band and I was playing saxophone, and then I was in drumline in high school. And I just was always a person that was just interested in a lot of stuff. Excuse me. Sorry. And I think it was the summer after high school, I took my first interaction with guitar was taking a community college course, beginner course. I bought a $100 Ibanez at Guitar Center and learned how to play the 4 chords to Brown Eyed Girl, I believe was the purpose of the whole semester. So I kind of got those chords. I have my little guitar. I by no means other than those 4 chords, that's kind of what I did forever. I had a whole life and career at that time, especially in theater. That's why I moved to New York. I was on the first national tour of Wicked when I was 20. And
whoa.
Yeah, so that's like my first. I have a whole like. It's really wild, actually. I mean, we'll get to all this, but it's so wild that so many people's sort of knowledge of me or context of me is as a guitarist, because I like, it's very much a thing I have fallen into and like did not expect. But I moved to New York, to pursue acting, and my first big job was touring with Wicked, and then I moved to New York and did a lot of like guest work on TV shows, like an episode on 30 Rock and Rescue Me, and like just kind of all of that kind of stuff, and a lot more theatrical projects and concert work, and was in the Broadway revival of Godspell. Like, you know, that was sort of like my path. And all the while during that time, I had a guitar that like I said, I knew my sort of 4 chords, and I would like write songs on the side, but it was never, ever a thing in my mind that like I would do professionally, that I would pursue. I always sort of wanted to be on Broadway. And then when I was doing the last Broadway show that I was in, which was Godspell, and this is in like 2012, I think. I remember the context of that show, without to go into it too much. It's weirdly the retelling of the book of Matthew in like modern day times. It's a very strange thing to explain, but it is a fun show that's been around a long time. And it's a cast of 10. And there is, with the exception of the character that plays Jesus and the character that plays Judas, the other 8 cast members all essentially, you don't necessarily play yourself, but your character name is yourself, weirdly. So like I'm on stage.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, I'm on stage as Celisse, right? And even and the sort of director's idea about how to do this particular production is that he wanted each person to sort of bring their own kind of like individual skill sets and tools and stuff to the show. So in the show, I played, like I wrote this like spoken word piece and played djembe, and I played ukulele, and I had this number where it started on uke, on like a little acoustic uke, and then the second verse when I was playing this like sort of like ukulele flying V looking thing, and then the end of the show, I had a Fender Strat and I was playing electric guitar. And at the time, you know, again, I still have my like kind of like 4 or 5 chords. So I'm kind of like strumming along in this big rock and roll moment. And there's these 2 other guys who play guitar in the pit. One guy in particular, this guy named Tad DeBrock, who's now a dear friend, incredible guitarist, who were just like wailing every night. And I would hold this guitar every night, and I would always leave feeling like kind of like a fraud, where it's like, you know, this moment happens, but like, I'm not really playing anything. Like it was in E, I'm just playing, you know, da, 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 you know, like not really doing anything. So anyway, in that process, I've had this sort of like a little bit of a come to Jesus moment where I felt like I am the most me that I could ever be in like a theatrical situation, and it's not enough. Like I have more to say artistically than this. So I made this decision at the time to step away. I left my agents at the time. Like I wanted to step away from theatrical work and to kind of refocus and put like 100% of my focus in music and really like go for it as a singer-songwriter and like develop my skills and sort of all of that. So I like left doing that work. I said, okay, I'm going to buy an electric guitar. And at the time, you know, I started playing shows like, and if you came to a show of mine at the time, I would do like 1 or 2 songs on acoustic guitar, and then I would do a thing on the djembe, and then I'd be at the piano, and then I'd be at the uke. It was sort of like all over the place, right? And I had this idea, maybe the summer after Godspell closed, where I was like, I want to learn how to play the electric guitar. Like, I'm going to buy a guitar and, like, let's just kind of see what's going on. So I bought a 1964 Harmony Rocket with an added Bigsby, having no idea that I ended up getting something freaking amazing and awesome. I just literally bought it because I was like, this is cute. Like, I just thought it was really cute. And it was $675 on eBay, which is, again, also like, I just lucked out in all of these ways. I had no idea what I was falling into and whatever. So I buy this guitar. I get it home. I try to sort of play the songs I'd been playing on acoustic guitar on this, and I didn't really get it, and I was sort of annoyed. And I was like, I don't understand. So the guitar goes to hang on my wall for maybe another, 6 to 8 months. Then I come back and I say, okay, you know what? I want to learn how to play just like the 12-bar blues, like something super simple. I just want to kind of like get myself kind of going. So I find some YouTube video on like how to play the 12-bar blues. And so I learned, I'm like, okay, cool. So then I'm like, okay, well, I want to learn how to play like one little lick. So I find some video where I learned to play, you know what I mean? And it's sort of like,
oh yeah,
very quickly, I just fell in love with this thing. I fell in love with electric guitar so hard and so fast, and just became really obsessed with it. And it so then the more that I started falling in love with guitar, it all of a sudden focused my own music in this way where it sort of like gave me this it took all of these sort of different influences and focused everything. And then sort of as all this is happening, I started doing more work, started doing more background work, and I started like, I was hired to run background vocals for Melissa Etheridge, and like I'm out on the road with her at the time, and her drummer was somebody that I knew from New York, this guy Brian Delaney, who had played a bunch of gigs sort of in my own project. And he had said to her at some point, like, oh, Celisse plays guitar. So she comes into sound check one day and she's like, hey, my wife and I spent a couple hours like watching a bunch of videos of you, like on YouTube, like you're amazing. I had no idea that you played it. I was like, oh, thank you so much. And she's like, oh, we should have you play sometime. Like it was super casual. And I was like, what? Okay, whoa. And I truly kind of didn't think anything of it until a couple of months later, an opportunity came up where she was like, yeah, like come out and do these like a couple weeks of dates and we'll have you play. And Melissa is so, she's so cool and chill and lax that like the vibe was very just kind of like, oh, just kind of feel it out. Like there was no like, oh, I'm looking for this or like focus on this or like at all. And the way that she works too, like a lot of those artists that have catalogs as big as hers, she kind of does these master set lists where you'll have like 40, 50 songs that she could pull from. And then she's sort of like making a different set list like each night, right? So because I'm a crazy person and I also saw like the opportunity in it, I was like, okay, I'm going to take these songs on this master set list and I'm going to shed as hard as I can on them. And like, I don't know if she's going to be playing rhythm or if she's going to be playing lead. So I'm just going to kind of be ready to do whatever. Like I'll play the lead stuff. If she's not, like I'll play the rhythm stuff. So I showed up, to our like first sound check, with no rehearsal, mind you, to do it. And she comes out and she's like, okay, well, let's run whatever particular first number we did at the time. And we start going and I start playing and she kind of turns around at me and she's like, whoa, like, okay. Like, and that first show, there kept being these moments, she kept sort of turning upstage and was like, I think legitimately shocked at like how, I don't know if it was about how good I sounded necessarily or as much as it was like how like maybe proficient I was. I think maybe the assumption maybe was that I'd be back there just kind of like chunking along, but I really took it super seriously. And once that happened, it sort of opened the door to start playing with her more. And then as soon as one person does that, then all of a sudden people start calling you to do that. So this is a very long way of saying I never, ever set out to be anybody's guitarist. I never had a vision for myself of like having my own project where I'm like fronting, a band in this way where I'm like on electric guitar, like doing that whole thing. I had no vision of playing for other artists. Like it really has just been this sort of thing where I started getting into these situations where people are like, oh, we hear you play, like you should come play. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm, a lot of times like learning on the job, a lot of times being asked to do a gig and like cramming as much as I can the week leading up to the gig. Like it's been very wild, but that's a very sort of like, I don't know, long story, semi-long / short version of kind of how I got here, if that at all makes sense.
It does. It also is kind of interesting to think about because like you know, the frames of context that people have for you are varied, right? So I knew you as an amazing guitar player first. So that was my first frame of reference for you. And then I go to find your music that you recorded by yourself. And I'm like, oh, she's not only a great guitar player, she's got an incredible voice too and can write songs. I'm like, that's cool. And then we're here talking and I'm like, oh, wait, you were on Broadway? Like, wait a minute. Like you've done all these things that are totally not within my wheelhouse. Broadway is something that, you know, because I'm a typical like rock dude, like I was very unfamiliar with it and not really all that interested in it until I was told by one of my good friends, Leon, who runs Pelican Noise Works. And I was in New York and he was like, you have to go to a Broadway show. And my wife really wanted to go to a Broadway show. And I'm like, okay, all right. And so I go to see Wicked. You know, ironically enough, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I was blown away.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what a Broadway show was.
Yeah,
I didn't get it until I actually went there and experienced it.
You're like, oh, okay, this is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a totally different thing than I think what most people think it is, I guess.
Totally.
If you've never experienced it before.
Totally. I think it's so special. I love theater. I mean, that's where I like really where like I come from and would love to go back and do that kind of work again in some years. But yeah, I mean, the guitar thing has been like, I mean, it's so fun. And it's why I've said many times, I've started to accept it now, but for a long time, I'm like, I didn't want to be called a guitarist because I'm like, it's the sort of thing where I think a lot of people will say, like, if you learn one instrument, like I had all this training, right? This classical training as a piano player, like you do have a lot of information that can transfer. Like if you're the sort of person that can like, you know, go into the shed and make things happen, like you can start to transfer that information to a lot of other instruments, you know? But with the guitar, like I had come from like a really trained background with all these other things. And then the guitar was always just this sort of like thing I had on the side that like nobody's paying attention to, no one's judging, nobody's looking at it. It's just like a fun thing. And I fell in love so hard, so fast and progressed so quickly. People started assuming that like I was something different. I mean, like that I like, you know what I mean? Than I ever sort of professed to be. And I'm like, I'm still even a little hesitant to be like, oh, I'm this guitarist, I'm this guitar, like whatever. Cause I'm like, I just know that I love the thing. I know that I love playing. I know that I love like discovering new things, like discovering new pedals, new amps. Like it's all still actually quite new for me. I've been doing it 6 or 7 years now. So like it feels very like I'm in the honeymoon phase and I want to stay there as opposed to like, I feel like as soon as you're like, I'm this or I'm that, that's when all of the things sort of are invited for the judgments of what you are or what you aren't or what. And I'm like, I just know that I love it. That's all. That's all I know. You just crushed a lot of people right now, myself included, because I've been playing for, I don't know, probably 17 or 18 years at this point. And yeah, I can't do what you do. And neither can 3/4 of the people listening to this podcast, probably. I don't want to judge. But, no, it's whatever. I mean, it's whatever. But I also think like, it's exciting for me to feel, I mean, as you could tell, I got started in the business just in entertainment and music and all of this so young. My first I was working right out of high school. Like I said, I got Wicked when I was 20. I was in a show before that for 2 years in San Francisco at 18. So there's a lot of ways in which I feel very seasoned and like, which is awesome. But then sometimes things don't become as exciting, as new, as fresh as they used to be. And the guitar just feels like there's such an innocence, what my love for guitar. And I don't want that to ever leave. So I don't know.
Well, and you came into it at a time that was really, really unique in the history of guitar, because like you've got all these Chase Bliss pedals and like all these really unique builders and things that you've kind of seemingly dove headfirst into the gear side of things too.
Yeah, totally.
Which is vast, as you probably are very aware of.
Oh my God, totally. Yes, it is. And I also I just, as who I am as a human being, I like small business. I like knowing who's made the thing that I'm using, so a lot of that has been dictated too, and truly making relationships with people. Like I reached out to Joel Court at Chase Bliss when all he had was the the warped vinyl. I think it was maybe the second version had just come out or something. And at the time, I had literally done nothing. I had not played with anybody fancy. Like, it was nothing. I had maybe been playing for like a year or two. And I had just reached out saying, hey, I'm an artist and I'm interested in what you're doing. And I'd love to try to get one of your pedals, but I'm basically broke. Will you give me a discount? I mean, that kind of email. And at the time, Joel reached back and I had sent him some clips of music. And he was like, I like your music and I want to help. And so he gave me a break on one of his pedals. And that's how our relationship started. And then since then, because now I happen to just love Joel, on top of the fact that what he creates is so amazing. Yeah. Oh my God. It's it feels like, I feel so lucky that I happen to really love this guy and I'm aligned with this company who makes some of the best things out there. I'm like, I don't necessarily want for other things because I'm like, you can't, especially now, you can't play through the Automatone, the MK2 and be like, oh, cool. But there's probably another overdrive pedal out there. There's not. I'm here to tell everybody that's listening. I've played Mini. I've also played through some pretty amazing amps through some fancy people who have amazing things. And that OD Fuzz Automatone Beach collaboration with Chase Bliss and Benson amps is otherworldly. There's no other word to describe it. It is so good, and I cannot imagine wanting for anything else for a long time. Doesn't mean that I won't get something else for a long time for whatever the reason, but there's not a thing that you can't do with that thing and that it does not sound amazing at. Have you played it yet, Blake?
I played it at NAMM. I haven't played it through my own stuff yet, although I hope to change that very soon.
So even at NAMM, the version at NAMM is a version or two even before what it is now. It is so... I know it's hard for everybody right now. Money is hard for everybody right now. I'm not suggesting that people put themselves out of house and home, but if you're even semi-considering if it's worth the money, I think it's... Once you have one, you're like, well, I would have paid twice as much for this. It's really, it's unreal. It really is not to be believed. Honestly, it sounds so good.
That's as good of an endorsement as you're going to get. Folks.
Truly.
So, there you go.
It's truthful. I'm being paid nothing to say it. It's just true. It's very good.
So, I haven't done this in a little while, but I told the people in the Facebook group that you were coming on, and largely the response was,
boo,
oh, I love her. So,
yeah, cool.
There was actually less questions and more just tell Celisse that I love her.
Oh, that's so nice. That's really nice. Cool.
But there were a few. Most of them revolved around your love for SGs.
Ah, yeah, sure. So
why the SG? What got you into it?
Wow, this is So cool. So now having just heard a bit of my history, so many of the things that I've sort of landed on has just been because I really am in the context of where most people are, so new to all of this. So I'm kind of like, oh, let me try this, or let me try that, or let's see, like I haven't been precious about anything for a while, I think. But when I started to kind of really get into guitar and I started hearing music differently, I like all of a sudden started hearing my Hendrix records and Earth, Wind and Fire records and like all this music I had loved for all these years. I started like hearing the guitars differently. I like started going down this deep dive with Sister Rosetta Tharpe, because as so many people, sadly came to know about her much too late in life, considering the fact that she's the reason why we have this genre called rock and roll music. The roots of it really, really start with her. But I started getting 100%. Into her. You know what I mean, right? So I started getting into her. I became obsessed with her story. And I was like, oh my God, that guitar is so freaking cool. So again, similar to even my harmony, I was like, I didn't even have enough information at the time to say, oh, the humbuckers, or oh, the tremolo arm, or whatever. I just was like, that guitar is so cool. This woman is a hero of mine. Also, so many incredible players have played that white SG, that 63 SG Custom. Now, since then, I just really want one. Like it just had always been a thing in my mind. Then maybe 2 years ago, I got connected with Ray Vinton at Gibson, one of the like amazing sort of like artists. I don't know if I call them artist relations or whatever, but one of the people that sort of deal with artists over there. And we have this first initial conversation where she's just basically like, yeah, I've been, and at the time I think I had a 339 that I love, that I'd been playing a lot. And she was like, I'm just been seeing you around on social media and I just wanted to connect with you. And, if you have any needs and you need any loaners or anything like that. And she's like, or anything you want to try out. And I immediately was like, listen, I really, really, really want one of the 63 reissues of these customs. Because I, at that time, had been sort of like low-key looking for them to pop up on eBay or Reverb. But there are actually not a lot of them made. And when they come around, a lot of times they're not cheap. Like the reissues are $6,000, $7,000, like not a cheap guitar, right? So I immediately am like, oh, I would love, one of these customs if you know of any lying around, whatever. She's like, yeah, I'm sure we could figure that out for you. Literally like 9-10 months pass. Nothing happens there. I kind of forget about it. She calls me one day and is like, I got you your SG custom. We've got one at the custom shop. I'm going to send it to you. And at the time I am like, I don't know if I'm being sent to keep, if I'm sending it just so I can play. I have no clue, but I was so excited, got the guitar in my hands, and immediately I was like, I do not have, and I can still say this, and I have a lot of guitars that I love, but there is something about that guitar, the wood, the craftsmanship on like the fretboard work, the ebony, like all the way that everything comes together. It is my most resonant guitar. The pickups are the most nuanced and the most complex. There's a warmth to those pickups, and also, but then the bridge bites, but not in that like too harsh in my ears way. Like there's just something about it. There's like, it's like you can get the warmth and the bottom end that you get in a semi-hollow, but then also still get that the same bite that you can also get with like a Strat, that it's like the only guitar I have found certainly yet where I know that I could take an SG, that SG in particular, to a gig. And if I just had to play that guitar, I could, you know what I'm saying? That like, I can make it all happen on that thing. So I just I fell really hard once I got my hands on that one. And now since then, I've just been like, I'm just really interested in them. I'm really interested in like the history of them, how they like what it means when it's like a wider neck and a wider nut. And like, I just think they're really interesting sounding guitars. And also the access to all those extra frets too is also it's hard to not love. Once you have all that space up there, you kind of don't want to go back. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, I've been a Les Paul guy for a very long time. My first electric was a Les Paul, and my friend Jess who I think you've met actually. Is more of an SG guy in the Gibson department.
Yes.
He's really more of a Strat guy, but he when it comes to Gibsons, he really likes SGs.
Yeah.
And I, for the longest time, even before I actually knew about Sister Rosetta, I saw that guitar and I thought, if I'm going to own a SG, that is the one.
Oh,
because look at that thing.
No, I know.
Just look at it.
I know it. It's so cool. It really is a cool looking thing. And I also think kind of like what you were sort of alluding to too. Like I, like everybody else, I had that Rocket, right? And that's one of those guitars that like I play at anytime it's my gig. That guitar is always there because there's just such a vibe to it. But I bought a Strat like everybody else. And I love Strats, by the way. I love Strats. Don't tell Gibson I said it, but I think Strats are fantastic. And I have a really fantastic 74 hardtail that has a great story behind it. I'll tell you at some other time. But I had started playing Strats and really loved playing Strats. Like that had been my like sort of go-to for a really like rocking heavy like lead tone. Because that's the context that so many of us have, right? With so many incredible players. But I just felt like when I played an SG, it all of a sudden felt like there's just a beefiness. There's a beefiness to the tone of humbuckers that I don't want. It's like I don't want to be in that like Strat versus SGs because I'm like, I think there's an argument for all. They're all great guitars, and it's just about like what you're going for. But for me, there's just something about an SG that I think is really interesting. And there's also a little aspect of it, if I'm completely honest, that also feels like carrying on a legacy of Sister R that feels also really good. That this guitar is so synonymous with this woman that is so important that we're just starting to talk about. And I feel as a Black woman playing electric guitar in a rock and roll space that I'm standing on her shoulder. So there's just that sort of like symbiotic representation there too that feels important, you know.
If I had to take a wild guess, I would imagine she wouldn't have anyone else. You know, I imagine you're exactly the person she would want to carry on that kind of legacy that she established.
Well, that's nice. I hope so. I hope that's true.
I mean, it is bizarre. I'll be honest. It's really bizarre that like we are just starting to talk about her, considering like the first clip I watched, I don't know how many years ago it was, but it was, you know, probably 5-ish years ago when I saw her for the first time. And I was like, what are we doing? Yeah, Hendrix is amazing. Of course. Let's not say he's not, but this lady.
I know. No, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, actually. I've been saying this publicly and I will continue to say it because I believe it to be true, but like I very much believe that a movie will be made about her at some point, hopefully soon. And I 1,000% believe that I will be the woman playing that role. Who knows? We'll see when it happens, but we need to know about this woman and we need to know about her in a big way. And I think her story also is so interesting and very telling of our industry. And have you read the book on her by Gail Wald, Shout Sister Shout? Because it's pretty amazing.
I have not, but sounds like I'm about to.
Yes, it is a fantastic book, especially for anybody who's listening and is looking for new things to read. You will learn so many things, one of which I think is really interesting, is that she's the first artist to have ever had like the version of what we all know now as like tour buses, like with sleeping quarters and sort of and dressing quarters versus like sort of the front like lounge area. Like she was the first person to ever do that. And at the time, as a Decca recording artist, it was out of necessity because she was traveling with her. I believe she was traveling with, like, it was when it was Sister Rosetta and the Rosettes. So she had like 3 young Black women vocalists behind her, but then also her band were the Jordanaires, young white male group. And in a lot of places they went to in the South, they weren't really safe. They weren't the same accommodations for both. There weren't. It just didn't make sense for them to try to stay in like whatever housing and stuff was available. So she bought this bus and basically converted it so that there would be areas for everybody to like get dressed and to be able to eat and to be able to sleep and to be able safe to do that. And now it's literally like that idea and that design was the basis for like how we know the tour bus to be now. It started with her.
That is really interesting because I've actually wondered that question before. Like, pondered. Like,
yeah.
What was the first tour bus? Like, that wasn't just a thing that, you know, everybody did.
Right.
It's like it's become ubiquitous, but I had no idea that she was the one that like helped pioneer that.
No,
That's
it's her.
crazy.
It's wild. It's wild. And it's one of the many things that you'll read and be like, how literally have we not been talking about this woman like all the time? Her life has been insane. It really has. So yeah, read the book for sure. She is, I think like a lot of people, like I didn't buy a Strat in a vacuum. I bought a Strat because I love Hendrix. I love Nile Rodgers. You know, I love John Mayer's playing. Like, it's like there's a point of reference to go, well, that instrument like does a thing and I want that. And she is what got me into even the ideas of SGs. And now I'm like very sold on SGs for sure.
Well, I mean, I'm 100% on board for signing a petition for you to star in that movie and get this movie made.
Awesome. Let's do it.
I mean, come on, let's do this.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I do think it's bound to happen. We'll see if I'm in it, but a movie has to happen because it's important. And I do think it's, you know, we are at the place where we are starting to talk about her. So there will be enough people, I certainly hope, that will go, oh, this should be a story that is told in a bigger, more robust way. So, you know,
100%. Yeah. I'm fully on board with that.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you that, like, I don't know, like, I just remember these first clips that I saw. I think I was actually at the Stax Museum in Memphis.
Oh,
I believe is where I was.
Sure.
And I was like, me and my dad were standing there just like jaws on the floor.
Yeah.
Like, where have we been? Like, that we didn't know about this. This doesn't make any sense. Totally. And then it turns out we're not alone. So I guess that makes me feel slightly better. But
no,
still,
I mean, I didn't either.
Everybody.
I mean, and I come from like musical people, like a lot of musical, like people that were quite cultured in music, but I didn't know. I mean, I probably learned about her really maybe 7-8 years ago. So I think it's coming to our consciousness for all of us. But it's exciting because then we've got a lot of new music to get into, or old music to get into now, you know. Right. You know.
Well, let me see. I'm going to scroll through the Facebook group one more time. Make sure we don't have any stragglers in there. It's going to be a must-listen episode. Yes, it is. Indeed. You're right.
Nice.
Let's see. We talked about the harmony. Talked about the SGs.
Yeah.
Oh, Jimmy Archie.
Jimmy!
Who you probably
I love
know.
Jimmy. Oh,
Yeah,
my
he
God.
says,
yeah.
Give her my love. I put together her original Schmidt array board.
Yes, he
so there
did.
You go.
Jimmy's a great guy, and if anybody's ever in any pedal board need, he is the guy to go to for sure. He's incredible.
I'm trying to get him to come on the show. I've been trying for a couple of years now since we first met in New York.
And he says no. I will harass him. He must. Are you kidding? He knows he has.
He seems like a little gun shy.
Oh my God! He has so many incredible stories too. Working for Gibson for many years, and now at the shop on 30th Street. He's stories about BBK. I mean, he would be a great person to get on. I'll help you. In that quest. If I can, for sure.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
For sure.
Okay, we have one question here that I think you're the perfect person to answer this.
Okay.
So, Brandon Sauce, he says, what would you say is the most important thing aspiring female guitarists need to hear? Also, I'm so stoked that my daughter gets to grow up seeing Celisse and other female shredders paving the way.
Oh my gosh.
So
that
there you
means
go.
a lot, and that's really nice. The most important thing that a young female aspiring guitarist needs to know. I think she needs to know that she is no less capable than any possible male guitarist that she could think of. Any point of reference that she could think of where the thought would be, well, I can't do that because the only people we see as rock stars, right? The story that we're told when we think about these like huge guitar gods, quote unquote, are, I mean, all the Kings, the Alberts, the BBs, the Freddies, Muddy Waters, Keith Richards, Jeff Beck, Derek Truck, obviously all incredible players, but it's all male. And like we're just saying, Sister Rosetta Tharpe is literally, quite literally, without debate, the reason the foundation in which all the people I just mentioned stand on, yet we're just talking about now, is because our country, has a real problem in forgetting its history, especially when it comes to women and people of color in particular. So I think the thing to remember, yes, as a kid is like, as a young girl, is there are no limits to what you can do. And I hope the visibility of someone like me and so many other female guitarists around right now and that have come before me is that the more of us there are, the more that it'll start to become normalized. That it's like, oh, what a rock and roll queen can look like is this as well. Like that rock and roll, the face of rock and roll can start to change. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And it's something that has always been kind of confusing to me.
Yeah.
Because I've known so many women growing up that were incredible musicians.
Yeah.
And better than me at the same instruments that we practice at. And it's it's just never really made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Why it's become sort of, and I think it's shifting, but why back in the day, maybe it was always viewed as sort of a masculine pursuit to play rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's
right.
that doesn't really make any sense. It's not I don't know. There's nothing inherently male about it.
Yeah, no, there's not.
It's just music.
Not. And it's even just electric guitar in general, right? Because that's what I think there's more space, I think. People are less shocked. Well, I'll say it like this. Well, certainly when I first started, when I kind of started to kind of refocus my energy and the kind of music that I was playing in my own sort of, my own original music, I would call musicians who maybe I'd gotten referred to from other players I might have known, and say I call a bass player and a drummer in keys and say, okay, I'm going to do this gig and we're going to play these songs and blah, blah, blah. And we'll do this rehearsal at this time. I would show up to rehearsal. This has happened more times than I can count, where I would show up with, let's say, a pedal board. And there's inevitably some guy in the room who's like, oh, okay, who's that for? And it's like, oh, it's for me. It's like, oh, okay. And then I plug in said guitar into said pedal board. And then it's literally a look of confusion. And it's what? And then when we're playing the music, it's on the break. Then it's man, I got to tell you, I had no idea. I just assumed that you were the singer and there was a different thing. And where I understand on one hand, where I think most people think it's a compliment, it's sort of why is it assumed that I wouldn't play? You know what I mean? And I think it's because the representation just hasn't been there. There hasn't been that point of reference for it to be really normalized, right? So, you know, I think we are in a different time. I mean, we are for sure, because we're having this conversation. Like, there's also so many incredible female guitarists in the world. And hopefully part of like my mission is to kind of also remind us of collectively of the women that have come before us that have been incredible this entire time. The Memphis Minis, the freaking like Bonnie Raitt. Why isn't Bonnie Raitt talked about all the time? This is an unbelievable guitarist that we're just, people are always just like, oh yeah, like she's cool. Like she's a great voice. Her slide playing is, I'm like, her slide playing, her feel is amazing. She has been out here doing this for decades, but yet she's not really in the conversation. Same with Melissa Etheridge, a phenomenal guitarist. Like, I dare you, and I really mean dare you, to find a better rhythm player than her. Her rhythm is unreal, but she's never really in the conversation in the same way, right? So, I don't know. I mean, I went on a little bit of a tangent, but I think the conversation is changing, and I'm excited to just be a person, to have a little bit of notoriety and be able to say, hey, we're paying attention to me. Like, here are all of the other amazing women to pay attention to too, that have literally been here doing this whole time. And they're amazing.
I don't know if it's a coincidence or it's just my bias because they've all been guests on the show at this point, but my favorite current guitarists, like 3 of them that come to mind immediately, are women. So
yeah, totally.
You, Yvette Young, and Emily Wolfe.
Yeah.
They've all been on the show.
Oh my God, yeah.
But like girls. Genuinely are 3 of my favorite players right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else to say. Like, it kind of just proves the point, I suppose.
Yvette and Emily both are like so good. I mean, this is the incredible thing about guitar too, I think, is like there's so many ways to come at it. I think more than any other instrument, like at the end of the day, like a piano is a piano. Like there's going to be different like perspectives on how to approach it, but like you're not going to hear too many different sounds per se. You know what I mean? Where like with guitar, it's like there's so many ways to approach it. There's so many ways to come at it. There's so many sounds and tones to pull from the thing, and I think it's really exciting when the door is wide open for literally anyone and everyone to have license over this thing. It's just really great and yeah, really exciting. So I love those 2 girls you just mentioned. They're both really interesting, nuanced players.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we're closing in on the end of the show here, and we've got a couple classic questions to get to. But before I do that, this is your chance to put up a billboard, say whatever you want to say, plug whatever you want to plug, say hi to whoever you want to say hi to.
Okay, hi, Mom. You know, just like normally at a different time in life, I'd be like, just catch me at this. I'm on this tour. I'm doing this thing. I'm releasing this thing. But honestly, right now, I'm like, I am doing a deep dive into technique. I'm trying to force myself to like really practice all the like modal, like all the sort of like annoying things that nobody really wants to practice. Like that's what I'm spending my time doing right now, to like be able to come out of this and be like, oh, I got some more vocabulary. So I don't really have anything to plug other than I'm trying to make a lot of music, and I have an album that I really, really, really love, that I believe in very much, that will come out at some point, realistically probably 2021 now, because I don't think, certainly no shade to anybody who is releasing music right now, but I think it's like, this is a really hard time to release a project when you can't tour it, you can't promote it, like you can't really, what do you do right now when none of us can really go anywhere, right? So it'll probably be 2021, but I've toyed around with I honestly might just record some things. I might do like a different EP, like from my apartment, and just release it based on literally nothing, and do that. Wait a minute. I'm so sorry. I've been in this large monologue. I do have something to promote. Duh. I just released a single 3 weeks ago. Hello. I released a single called Freedom. Oh my God, my brain. I did release a project that I actually had been working on for a couple of years, and then the timing just seemed to be exactly right, the right time to release it. I released a song, and the corresponding music video that I love very, very, very much. It is called Freedom. You can find it either on my Instagram, on the IGTV, or it's on YouTube. It's able to be streamed, it's able to be downloaded, and any and all proceeds received from either the downloading or streaming of that song or the viewing of that video will go to Campaign Zero and the Movement for Black Lives. So yeah, you could definitely check that out and definitely share that with your family and friends. It's a project that has included over 150 volunteers and took a couple years to put together, and I love it very much. Love the song and I love the video.
It's a great song. I watched the video last night.
Oh,
I was like,
cool.
yeah, this this is So
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought it up because I forgot to.
Oh,
So,
well, I did
there you
too.
go.
I mean, this is literally so like such COVID life to just feel like I forgot that I even did that. I'm just living in a haze of like Netflix and cereal.
I understand.
Yeah.
I was just, before I came out here to record, my wife was like, is it Friday?
And you're like,
I'm like, I think so. Yeah, it is, because I'm recording. Yeah. I'm recording with Celisse, so yeah, it's Friday.
Also, what's a Friday?
I guess.
Like, what's a day anymore? Does it even matter? Does it count? But yeah.
Who knows?
I know it.
All right. Well, now that we've got into that, now it's time for the classic questions.
Okay.
So the first one being, what is your favorite boss pedal?
Whoa. Whoa. Okay. I mean, I'm going to go with a classic Blues Driver, as that was the first pedal that I ever got, because it just seemed like it's $100. Everybody has one. This is cool. So I've got a special place in my heart for it.
It's a good pedal. I don't think it gets enough love.
I think it's a great pedal, actually. I still have that one, and it sounds great with Strats. I know that.
Perfect. All right, here's the last question, and this is the one that, is a little dicey, generates a little bit of controversy.
Uh-oh.
What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Oh, my God. Favorite kind is gonna be, like, are we talking brand, or are we just talking about, like, just, like, what's on it?
I mean, it can be brand, it can be style, it could be a favorite local place, it could be anything. What is your favorite pizza that you've ever eaten?
This is going to make me sound very basic, but I just want everybody to stop their judgments and to just go with me on this. Domino's has come back and is better than ever. I'm here for a Domino's, and Domino's does it's like a handmade. There's a particular kind of crust, I think, that's handmade that makes it like particularly buttery and crispy, and it's very good. And I like a Domino's handmade pizza with sausage and green peppers and cheese and sauce. It's very good. Oh, sausage, green peppers, and mushroom. It's my pizza.
Oh, I'm into that. I'm into that. It's been a little while since I've had Domino's, but I did have some when they, what was it, maybe 7-8 years ago, when they were like, we heard you. We know our pizza is gross, and we fixed it.
Right. What did you think? 7-8 years ago?
Well, so I thought it was a massive improvement over the old Domino's. It's not even really fair to call it the same thing.
Right. Well, I'm sure there were like, I really should have been like, I love this local place, or I love, like, there's so many other obviously incredible pizza places, but like, I'm telling you, Domino's, especially over the last couple of years, has really gotten its life together, and it is The next time you have an opportunity, truly, you should order Domino's, and you've got to pay the extra like $1 or $2 for whatever the handmade is. It is surprisingly good. Truly, it's a very good pizza.
I will put that on the list because I don't think that I've experienced what you're talking about, and I do have a local Domino's, so there's no reason not to.
This is the time. This is the time during the pandemic to really go for everything you could possibly think of. This is it.
It's the time.
Yeah.
Well, Celisse, thank you so much for coming on. This was an amazing conversation like I knew it would be. And
thanks, Blake.
I would love to do it again sometime.
Yes, of course. We'll do it again for sure. I'm just here, and I love doing these. And you're great to talk to.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Blake.
All right, we're going to put a bow on this thing. So, for Celisse, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tone. All right, there you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really did. She's a delight of a person, and I can't wait to catch her live sometime when that's a thing again. And you should too. She's really awesome. Definitely check her out on the interwebs if you have not already and you don't know who she is. Get familiarize yourself. You will be glad that you did. All right, folks, I think that's enough. If you want to hear more of this conversation with Celisse, there's a little more over on Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/tonemob. For as little as $5 a month, you'll have access to almost 100 extra episodes of the podcast, some of which are crazy. Really crazy. All right, big shout out to Nick at Playback Engineering for making this episode possible. He is the man doing the editing on this thing because I am a busy, dumb person, and he's much better at it. And if you have a podcast or you're thinking about starting a podcast, hit him up at Playback Engineering on Instagram. He is the man, seriously. He's amazing. Thank you so much, Nick. You did a lot of heavy lifting on this episode, and I really appreciate it, man. All right, talk to you all next week. Goodbye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style. Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.